Alright, I am back with another video, and today we have another Origin build. It's been a while, and today we're doing one for Wyll. Now, I know what you're thinking looking at this outfit. You must be thinking, oh gods, he's made Wyll evil again. Not this time! But I did have an interesting fall. So, there's a build I've been wanting to try out in Baldur's Gate 3, which I actually haven't yet, despite it being a fairly popular build in tabletop D&D, and that is combining Barbarian and Warlock together. Basically, the idea is that you use Barbarian's tankiness to make the Fiend Warlock's temporary HP, which is gained from Dark One's Blessing, go a lot further, essentially making you an incredibly tanky temporary HP tank. And I'm pretty sure lots of people have probably tried this strategy in Baldur's Gate 3 before, and it's probably worked to, decent success, but I really wanted to try my own spin on it. And then it got me thinking, what reason would I have to make this Fiend Warlock Barbarian? Well, Wyll already exists as a Fiend Warlock in the game, and that got me thinking, what if we took Wyll, killing Karlach, I know, but turned it into a redemption arc? Because you see, I thought about a really interesting potential narrative where you pick Wyll as an origin character, you hunt down Karlach and kill her, blindly following, Mizora's orders, and as such being awarded the Infernal Robe for your efforts. But before you kill Karlach, when you first meet her, there is this scene where, because of the tadpole, you link minds, you see Karlach's memories, and I think after Wyll kills Karlach, he would be stuck with those memories. He would see those same visions playing in his head over and over again, to the point where he would eventually come to blows with the fact that he did the wrong thing. He made the wrong choice, and he regrets it, and as such, seeks redemption. Now, obviously, if you did this in a playthrough, Wyll would be a human, not a tiefling, but obviously I use a certain Act 3 save file that I have for playtest purposes, and I didn't want to have to play through the whole game again just to make Wyll a human and then test that way, so you're going to be having a tiefling Wyll today, but just picture that this is human Wyll. And I thought that created a pretty interesting way of incorporating the barbarian levels, because what if those memories that from Karlach that are now playing in Wyll's mind actually almost kind of pass on some of her inherent barbarian abilities onto him, almost like kind of a psychic mind link gave him like new power, and as such he's now channeling not only the regret and the rage he feels for what he did to Karlach, but also Karlach's very own rage itself. And as such, it's almost like a carrying of the torch, a fusion of the two, where he will never probably forgive himself for what he did, but he will sure as hell stop the absolute and avenge her, in a way. Avenge what he did to her, like taking that onto himself. And I feel like Wyll could definitely see it as an excuse to kind of make the world a better place, like working to, do better than the people he wronged and such like that. And I just think it could be an interesting new way to kind of take that character arc, while also introducing a classic tabletop D&D build into the game. But I'm not just going to be like, oh yeah, well we'll just do the build. Let's slap Warlock and Barbarian together and be on our way. No. I have thought of some interesting, unique ways to blend the two. Wyll's panache for rapier fighting and a bit of a showy, kind of fighting style, as we see in his opening cutscene, with the Barbarian's rage, to create a kind of fun gameplay loop that allows you to use a bit of extra resources to deal out some pretty massive damage, while still keeping on Wyll's overall theme and kind of play style. So I really hope you enjoyed this build. I definitely put quite a bit of effort into it when it comes to like the roleplay and such like that, which I haven't done in a little bit, I'll admit, but I think this could be a really, really fun way to play a Wyll origin build if you are looking to play the character, but you're not really sure how you want to go about it. So, without further ado, let's get into the build. Wyll is a human, meaning that he gets an extra skill proficiency as well as a couple of extra weapon proficiencies. We don't really need to worry about that, because Wyll always has rapier proficiency no matter what. He always comes with it no matter what you respec him into, which is kind of nice. We also do get an extra proficiency from being a human, but because this is companion Wyll, it's just gone with persuasion, which is the default for him, which is absolutely fine. I would probably take something along those lines, unless you want to change it up if you want to take the beguiling influence thing later on. So if you play Wyll as an origin, you can change that up, but really it doesn't matter here. For our starting class, we are going to kick things off as a Warlock today, because I'm actually taking things into account when it comes to the progression of the build. While, yes, if you started Barbarian, which you can obviously respec if you want to later, you would technically have a higher base HP, because Barbarians start with more. That's entirely up to you. I went with this build starting with a Warlock without respecs in mind to have a nice kind of narrative and mechanical progression as you play the build. So you'll have to let me know kind of what you think of the level progression here, but I do think it is going to make sense if you kind of follow me here. So we are starting with Warlock level 1. Warlock level 1 is going to give us access to pretty much everything we need. We get simple weapons and light armor, but again, we already have rapier proficiency because we're Wyll, so that doesn't matter. And we don't even need like Hexblade or Pact to the Blade yet. We just get the ability to use that weapon right off the bat because we're Wyll, so that's nice. We also are going to get a couple of cantrips, and yes, I am just going to take the Eldritch Blast and Booming Blade. I feel like Wyll literally references, like he references using Eldritch Blast in his dialogues. I feel like it would be a mistake not to take it. And while Booming Blade will have less of a use for us in this build because of Rage blocking it, I actually did find it fun where you could open up a combat with Booming Blade, Rage as a bonus action, and then just attack with your extra attack anyway. I don't know, it's kind of fun. So, I mean, we might as well include it on the build, but you can obviously include something else if you like. Remember, you're obviously not going to be able to use it while ranging, so maybe something like Friends as a good out-of-combat cantrip would be nice. Really, it's up to you. Or you could even take Blade Ward now to kind of, like, prepare yourself for having Barbarian resistances later, but that's not really worth it. Now, obviously, our subclass is the Fiend, and right away we're going to be getting that Dark One's Blessing feature. When you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, this gift from your patron grants you 1 temporary hit points. Now, that's kind of a bug in the tooltip. What it actually does is it gives you a number of temporary hit points equal to, I think it's your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. So, while that might not sound like a lot, especially since we are going to be putting levels into Barbarian, again, you have to think that effective HP is doubled by the Barbarian resistances. So really, it's not a huge deal. Like, well, I say it's not a huge deal, it's a pretty big deal, because you get to really deal with, like, basically having, I believe I got about 13 HP on average from Dark One's Blessing towards the end of the build, meaning that with resistances, if you are resisting the attacks you're having against you, that is effectively 26 temporary HP, which is very, very nice. Pretty sure that's how math works. I'm not the best with numbers. Moving on to our spells. There's 2 that I think you're going to benefit from right off the bat. Again, can't really cast things that use concentration, and as such, we are going to be a bit limited with our spell choice when we do Rage, but this build is also kind of designed to dip in and out of Rage in a single battle. You'll see what I mean when we get there. But first up, let's talk about Hellish Rebuke, because yes, this still exists in the game. You can cast reaction-based spells while raging. So Hellish Rebuke basically is you furiously retaliating with fire after being hit, which I think for a barbarian who can cast spells, that feels kind of on point, so I like having Hellish Rebuke here as a flavor option. Now, of course, we only have 2 spell slots per short rest, so really that might not always be the best option to go for, as you probably are going to use 1 or 2 setup spells before a combat encounter starts. So at the end of the day, it's probably not a huge deal, but it's still nice. It's a nice flavor pick for whenever it does come up. However, a really cool thing for this build is Armour of Agathis. You gain 5 temporary HP and deal 5 cold damage per spell slot level whenever basically you get the temporary HP to start, and then when you get hit with a melee attack, you deal the cold damage, and that goes up by 5 for each spell slot that we use. We're going to have level 4 spell slots by the time this build is done, so you can start combat with 20 temporary hit points, but deal 20 cold damage whenever you get hit. And again, with Barbarian resistances, that can stack up pretty damn quickly. That's a decent chunk of damage to be dealing out just for taking hits, and we'll be able to do even more. This is a pretty standard choice on the original D&D build as well. I'm not claiming credit for the creativity here, but it is so synchronous with the build that it does make sense. Wyll obviously comes with the folk hero background, giving you animal handling and survival, which I'm going to use as a bit of an excuse for my subclass choice a bit later. You can probably already guess what it is. Moving on to our skill proficiencies, a little bit of a weird one for a Warlock maybe, but it's mostly all still here. Strength is at 8. While that will limit some of our barbarian abilities, like being able to throw stuff, feel free to use the elixirs here, we don't really need strength at all in this build. Dexterity is at 14, a little bit low, I will admit, but between my weapon choice and the fact that you can take Pact of the Blade on this build, you don't really need a high dexterity, as because of barbarians and armored defense, as we're using the Infernal Robe, you'll be able to get quite a decent amount of AC from our Constitution, which we will have pretty high, starting at 16. Intelligence is at 8, we don't really need it for this build. Not saying Wyll is dumb, but I mean, we did kind of just let ourselves kill Karlach, you know, just willy-nilly and then regretted it later, but also, you know, go into a barbarian rage, so maybe intelligence isn't our strong suit in this canon timeline, non-canon timeline, I should say. Wisdom is at 12, just for the saving throws, and charisma is at 16, because it is going to be our main attacking modifier for both our spells and our weapon attacks. For our skill proficiencies here, like I say, we get animal handling and survival thanks to our background. Persuasion because we're a human, so let's fill it out with deception and intimidation to really make us an overall party face. And let me tell you, high charisma barbarians are some of the most fun things to play in this game because the dialogue choices are hilarious, so give this build a try for that alone. Right, that's level 1. Alright, at Warlock level 2, you're going to be able to pick up another spell, and my personal recommendation from this point on would be Command. I think this is just a general, really powerful spell that you can just have in your back pocket that works pretty much all the time. Commanding a creature to flee, move closer, potentially drop its weapon, which I think is the most powerful effect. You just have a lot of things you can do. It's not concentration based, so you can cast this as an action and rage on the same turn and not immediately lose the effect, meaning that you could go into battle with a nice little bit of setup. Moving on as well to our Eldritch Invocations, the first one that you're going to want to take is Fiendish Vigor. Say you're out of spell slots, but you still want to start combat with a little bit of temporary HP. Well, this is just going to give you temporary HP, 7 points of it, anytime you want. Literally, it's an infinite source of a small amount of temporary HP. Again, with the resistances, that can effectively double. Now, overall, maybe not the strongest option, but I think it works well for this build. And if you find yourself outside of Rage, but still wanting to kind of keep yourself a bit tankier, you can spend your action to kind of keep yourself going with temporary HP continuously, which can work pretty well depending on your weapon choice if you choose a weapon that lets you attack off a bonus action, for say. So, you know, I think it actually works out kind of nice to just have this in your back pocket, just in case. As for your other choice, really, it's entirely up to you. We obviously do have Eldritch Blast on this build, so I do think Agonizing Blast might just be the way to go. At level 3, we're going to get to choose our Pact Boon as well as level 2 spells. And my first level 2 spell of choice is Mirror Image. One of the issues that this build can have is because of our middling dexterity, we could be likely to get hit and lose a big chunk of our temporary HP before we're able to rage in combat. At least this did happen sometimes in my solo testing. And Mirror Image is a really good before combat buffing spell. If you know you're going to get into combat, cast this beforehand, give yourself a massive armor class buff to save some of your temporary HP, and then rage once your turn actually comes up in combat, and then you're pretty much off to the races. So this would kind of be another part of the kind of setup spell lineup that we're going to have. Otherwise, you can pick something else. There's options like Blindness or Shadowblade. Shadowblade could be interesting. You'll have to go. You could kind of basically use this to go for like a dual wielder playstyle, wielding our rapier in the main hand and Shadowblade in the offhand. If you make this your Pact of the Blade weapon and then pair this with the Infernal Rapier so that they both use Charisma, that could be a really potent playstyle. One I could possibly suggest, since obviously Shadowblade does not take concentration, so we can keep it up as a barbarian. Maybe there's some sort of psychic barbarian build in the future. Ooh. Let me know if you guys want to see a psychic barbarian using Shadowblade. That could be interesting. Oh, okay. Let me know if you guys want to see that. Moving on to our Pact Boon, we do need to take Pact of the Blade for this build, mainly because we are going to need this to make our extra attack, as we're not going to level 5 a Barbarian in this build. You can drop Pact of the Blade if you do decide to go to level 5 a Barbarian, maybe for extra HP, etc. You get extra attack that way, in which case you don't need this. In fact, Pact of the Tome would feel pretty on point with things like Vicious Mockery, which I think fits for Wyll. I've often made Wyll part Bard in my videos, so I just like having Vicious Mockery on him. But otherwise, Pact of the Blade is basically what we need here for this level scheme, just to get extra attack, but otherwise, feel free to play around with it. Next up, at level 4 of Warlock, we're going to be grabbing our next cantrip, which I think is just going to be Friends. Again, we can't really use a lot of these combat cantrips, so Friends or Mage Hand is probably going to be my choice here. Mainly Friends, because we're already a party face. And then moving on, I think we are going to grab Blindness here. I quite like Blindness because it's a non-concentration spell, meaning that we can cast this at the start of combat, rage after the fact, and keep the benefits, basically blinding a creature, which I think is going to work pretty well for us. We also do get to choose our first feat of the build, and I would say we're going to bump up our Charisma here because it just increases everything that we do. Now, finally, at level 5 of Warlock, we're going to be getting our Deepened Pact feature, allowing us to gain extra attack with our Pact weapon. We need this if we're not taking that Barbarian extra attack, so we just need to pick this up here regardless. We also do get to choose level 3 spells, and I think this is kind of an interesting choice, actually. We can grab Counterspell. This gives us another kind of unique aspect to our tanking, in the fact that we can use Counterspell while raging, because again, it's a reaction-based spell, those still work. Meaning that, by using Counterspell, we can kind of tank a massive spell by just preventing it from going off, which feels very fun in practice. Moving on though, we do get to choose another Eldritch Invocation, and at this point I don't think there's a reason not to take Devil's Sight. It's just a free buff that's going to help us out in niche situations. We're not playing off of darkness in this build, but hey, you never know, this could be useful. Now, I would say at this point in the build, I would probably say that you kill Karlach around level 3. You achieve levels 2 and 3 incredibly quickly in Baldur's Gate 3, and if you really take your time in the early areas, I think most people wouldn't find Karlach until around level 3. Then, I think with the narrative that we've conjured, I think it wouldn't be it wouldn't immediately set in for Wyll, right? I think he'd have to really stew and ruminate on everything that he has come to experience and learn from Karlach's memories. And as such, I don't think his barbarian aspects would come out right away, but I think by the time we've hit level 5 of Warlock, they do. So, here is where we multiclass to Barbarian, giving us all of the goodies that come with such a choice. Not only do we now gain access to all martial weapons and shields, which we are going to be using, we also gain access to Rage, dealing 2 extra damage with melee improvised weapons and throwing attacks, as well as resistance to physical damage and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. Obviously, our strength still isn't the best, but hey, this still works for us. But another important thing that we're going to need is unarmored defense, which allows us to add our constitution to our armor class. Now, up until now, our armor class wouldn't have been the best, so it might have been a good idea to take the mage armor invocation, but obviously you'll respec that out once you get armored defense from here. At Barbarian level 2, we're going to gain access to Danger Sense, giving us advantage on dexterity saving throws against traps, spells, and surfaces. So now, we're really tanky against things like Fireball, as well as Reckless Attack. Now, we don't actually need to rely on this as much as we would normally have to if we were, say, running a Great Weapon Master build. This is just going to be a nice thing that we can quickly click as a reaction if we miss, but we don't need to use it all of the time like more power building focused builds, so we still get to be quite defensive with our AC as well, without having to rely on this all the time. At Barbarian level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and honestly, this is a pick your favourite moment. I would say none of these are really going to be thematically appropriate more so than the others. Berserker I think is the closest to Karlach's form of rage. It's definitely the form of Barbarian that I've used the most of her, so if you want to go with that you could. And obviously that would give you a bonus action attack that you could use, which would obviously be useful in a lot of situations, but thanks to our low strength, unless you're using Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength, you're not really going to be able to take advantage of the Enraged Throw feature. So really, while I think this is a good idea, unless you're using Elixirs, it's probably not the best idea. Giant, I think, personally fits the least. I don't really see Wyll growing rather tall. I do like that we get Thaumaturgy, though. I feel like that does fit the build quite well as a high charisma character. Getting increased carrying capacity is nice, but I just don't think the size increase really fits Wyll too much. So I don't think this one really fits, but hey, you can take it if you want to see a big Wyll. I don't know why you would, but you could. Wild Magic also fits, because it could be that the Barbarian rage that you're experiencing is conflicting with your pact with Mazora in some way, causing your Warlock abilities to manifest in strange and unseen ways, giving you access to magical awareness, which is kind of rubbish, but whatever. But having that Wild Magic rage that gives you random effects could be kind of fun to play with, so honestly, you could go with this one. And then, Wild Heart. So, Wyll is the Blade of Frontiers. He goes out into the world fighting evil all over the place. He's got the folk hero background, which comes with animal handling and survival. Wildheart is, in my opinion, the best choice here, but not for the reason you might think. Obviously, we're going to get to speak with animals, which is always a ton of fun, and again, high charisma character, so very beneficial. But we also get to choose a bestial heart. Now, a typical D&D build obviously picks the bear heart. If you have resistance to pretty much all damage, well, then those temporary HP points go a lot further. You get to basically have more HP than ever on every single attack, except for psychic. But I honestly don't think it's the most thematically appropriate for Wyll. While there would be the power building choice, and is what I would personally recommend in that regard for anyone who's attempting this build, for Wyll specifically, I prefer the Wolf Heart. You see, with the Wolf Heart, you're going to gain access to Rage Wolf Heart, meaning that you can use Inciting Howl. Each ally within earshot will be able to move a bit of extra movement. We're probably never ever going to use that. However, your allies will have advantage on melee attack rolls against enemies within 2 meters of you. So if you charge in, which I'll get to a bit later, and set off basically mark a target to be hit with advantage all the time, you can basically kind of act as like the charismatic party leader while still being a barbarian, directing your allies kind of like what Duke Ravengard would have done with his, his commanding sword that gives him more charisma and allows him to use the commanding strikes thing. You know the one I'm talking about. Duke Ravengard's longsword. I don't know, it just kind of feels like by the time you're at this stage of the game, you're starting to approach maybe the late of Act 2, start of Act 3, maybe Wyll is finally starting to come around to what's really important to him, and that he's going to let his rage be his power. He's going to use that power to lead, to fight for what's right, and protect those he cares about by working together with his newfound allies to overcome his own shortcomings and become a better person, a better blade. I personally think Wolfheart fits Wyll way more. Is it the most powerful option? No. Obviously, Bearheart would play into the defensive aspect and probably be the best overall choice. But I can't deny the thematic synergy of the Wolfheart. That's what I'm picking today. Fight me. Please don't, I'll probably lose. We're all kind of strong. Especially in numbers. There's a lot of you. Right, moving on, we do get to now pick our second feat of the build, and this is where Charger comes into play. Now, hear me out on this. This is a really cool way to blend the Suave Rapier playstyle into a Barbarian's Rage. You get to use Charger weapon attack, allowing you to dash across the battlefield using your movement, without provoking opportunity attacks, and then hitting for increased damage. You can see we're getting a plus 11 there, which is pretty damn good. So not only do you basically get to do that kind of anime-style rapier sliding charge attack that you see in things like Ruby or whatever, you just also get to, hit for a massive amount of damage, maneuver across the battlefield while still being tanky because you're not taking opportunity attacks. And I don't know, I just feel like it's a cool way to blend the rapier playstyle with Barbarian's Rage, literally charging and piercing someone on the end of your rapier, which just feels cool. The downside is that it takes your action and bonus action. The upside is we don't use our bonus action once we start raging, so this is essentially free extra damage every single turn. Yeah, not really a reason not to take this on this build in my opinion, unless you're going for that dual wielder Shadow Blade Infernal Rapier strategy that I was talking about earlier. You can grab dual wielder here. If you think this build doesn't have enough HP or AC, you could take a buff to con, that could work. Really, up to you, but I love the thematic synergy of Charger with everything that we've got going here, so I really think we should pick this up. You also do get Charger Shove, but because, again, of our low strength, not really going to use it. However, if you've got those elixirs, well, you can also push people really far away, which is kind of funny. Now, as I said, if you don't want to rely on Pact of the Blade, or you want 3 extra attacks if you're not playing on Honor mode, you could take level 5 of Barbarian here, but I actually do want to go back to Warlock, as there's not really much else I want from Barbarian as a whole, and really, I think we could just get more mileage out of leveling up Warlock a bit more. So, at level 6 of Warlock, we're going to get Dark One's own luck, allowing us to call on our patron to change our fate and add a 1d10 to an ability check once per short rest. Basically, another way to be an effective party face. We also gain access to another level 3 or lower spell of our choosing, and I mean, there's not really, again, too much we can take. We've got concentration options, which obviously we can't use while raging, so really there's not too much going for us here. Personally, I think opening combat with a fireball is kind of a Fiend Warlock thing to do, so we'll go with that. At Warlock level 7, we're going to gain access to level 4 spells, and therefore level 4 spell slots, which allows us to pick up Fire Shield. Wreath your body in flames that shed light in a 3-meter radius, providing resistance to fire or cold damage, and retaliate against melee attacks. So not only do we pick up an extra resistance to a common damage type, we also get to retaliate with damage just for being attacked. And yes, this stacks with Armour of Agathis. So you can be dealing out fire and cold damage just for being attacked, with those massive amounts of temporary HP that you're going to get from the resistance. Again, this is part of the D&D strategy. I'm not claiming ownership over this idea. It works so well. Give it a try. It's super fun. And the fact that the Infernal Robe gains the fire version of this as a bonus action once per long rest may have also helped with the inspiration for this build. Just a bit slightly. But we'll talk more about that later. Now, as for your other Eldritch Invocation that you get at this level, there's not really much here. We kind of have everything that I would want from this, and because of the way our starting stats lined up, we don't need something like Beguiling Influence, but if you wanted to change that up if you use this as an Origin build, you could. I mean, Repelling Blast is good, actually, because if you Eldritch Blast outside of combat to push an enemy away from you, then you can Rage and then charge towards the next turn. I don't know. Something. Mask of Many Faces is also good if you want to be a party face, so let's pick your favourite, really. And finally, Warlock level 8. We get to choose another level 4 spell. I don't know what to choose. Really, there's not too much left for us here, so I think I'll just grab Shadowblade in case, just to remind myself to talk about that potential strategy maybe later. We also do get to choose another feat at this point, and really, you have a choice. You can max out Charisma, which is what I did, because I feel like that just gives us the most offensive power, but buffing your Dexterity or Constitution would also help in the defensive department. So really, it's up to you. Honestly, pick whatever you like here, it's basically a free feat. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a pretty damn tanky Wyll. You're going to be able to deal out massive damage with your weapon attacks, as well as be incredibly tanky. Retaliating with ice and fire damage, just for being attacked, which honestly is kind of damn impressive. You're also going to get access to a bunch of things like being able to use a summon as well, which can help with the wolf pack thing, but also just being a great leader to your allies. You're a high charisma barbarian. You are the face of the party while also being the party tank. And you just get to do a bunch of anime stuff. Honestly, it doesn't really get more anime than this build, oddly enough. Also, I've just realized Wyll is standing incredibly still. Like, incredibly still. Like, the only thing that's moving is his mouth. Do you see that? Hang on, I'm going to sheath the weapon. Okay, now he's animated. That's really weird. Like, he's just frozen. That's so strange. Anyways, moving on to the equipment. So, let's talk about our weapon of choice first, the Infernal Rapier. Now, I went with this because it is part of Wyll's questline, and again, if Wyll chooses later on to defy Mizora because of what she made him do, I think it kind of makes sense that he gets the Infernal Rapier in the bargain to remove his pact later on when you rescue her in Act 2. And honestly, it just helps to build out a ton. It allows you to gain a +1 bonus to spell save DC, and it allows you to use your Charisma modifier outside of Pact of the Blade, which again can enable the Shadowblade strategy or the use of other weapons if you so choose, if you want to, or the use of other packs, I should say. If you decide to change up the leveling scheme a little bit, it just gives you a little bit more freedom, but again, this is Wyll's weapon. I mean, maybe the Duelist Prerogative would be better, but honestly, I just love this weapon so much for Wyll that I just think it works the best here. And being able to summon that Cambion really can help, if you want to meld that with the Wolfheart aspect. So, you know, I just think it works out pretty well for us. Combining this with the Absolute Protector Shield, this gives us a way of using Fire Shield Chill without using a spell slot once per long rest. Not to mention it also gives us a +2 to AC, which we do kind of need, I'm not going to lie. And also, if you have the Absolute's brand, you can actually reduce damage received from spells by 1, so that's making you even tankier. So yeah, for our weapon choice, that's pretty cool. I've also thrown the Near Misser on this build, because it's technically a ranged force damage attack, so this is kind of a sneaky way to get a lesser version of Eldritch Blast while raging. So, I mean, there you go. It's not going to have the most accuracy because of our middling dexterity, but you can kind of change that up if you want to, but if you need a ranged option in the pinch, this might just work for you. For an early game weapon, you can go with the Rupturing Blade, which is nothing special other than the fact that it's a +1 rapier that can be obtained in Act 1, but also comes with a unique attack that's based around fire, allowing you to deal extra piercing damage and fire. So, you know, once per short rest, it's kind of a fiendish Warlock themed attack, which works perfect for Wyll. Moving on to the headpiece of choice, we've got the Bone Spike Helmet. Now this is kind of what's making me think of that Psychic Barbarian build. Again, I'll come back to that in another video, but whenever you rage, creatures must make a wisdom save or take psychic damage, and targets receive half that damage on a save. You gain a +2 to intimidation, but you also gain menacing attack. This gives you the same attack boost as Charger, but this uses your action, and can work as part of extra attack. So now, between Charger and this, you can make 2 attacks that use extra damage. We also get the ability to possibly frighten a target as well. So yeah, that's 2 attacks in a turn that are going to deal a +11 damage modifier, plus the 1d8. So you're dishing out pretty significant amounts of damage, even without something like Great Weapon Master, which feels awesome. With the ability to also potentially spread side effects like Frightened, it can't really go wrong. But in the early game, you can also grab the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, giving you the ability to, whenever you cast a cantrip, or whenever you inflict a condition, my apologies, weapon attacks will deal additional damage equal to your spell casting ability modifier. You won't be able to get as much mileage out of this, but I really didn't have a better early game option, so really something like the Haste Helm could also work. No cloak for this build, but obviously with something like the Cindermoth cloak would work really well here, but I kind of use that one a lot, so I thought I'd just skip it out for this build for the sake of fashion. Moving on to the Infernal Robe. Obviously, this is the reward that you get for killing Karlach as Wyll, and as such has kind of fueled the entire idea for this build. You get access to Fire Shield Warm, which allows you to basically get it as a bonus action, which is unique because it's normally cast as an action once per long rest. You get a +1 to your armor class, as well as resistance to fire damage. Again, combining this with what we already have, it works out pretty damn well. This also does technically make it that Fire Shield Chill, either used from our shield or from the spell, technically works the best, because that means you'd have 5 resistances total. But otherwise, I think it's still a really cool thing, that I just think it makes sense that this kind of can work with this build. Because again, the fact that it's a robe, so it works with Barbarians' unarmored defense. I don't know, it just felt like it all synergized kind of well thematically, so I'm happy to have it here, because I never really get to show it off. Because, you know, I'm really not a fan of killing Karlach normally, but hey, for this build, it works. Moving on to the Bone Spike Gloves. Your attacks ignore resistance to slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning damage. Really, this is just here to get over some pesky resistances that could come our way, which will prevent us from killing our opponents efficiently, and as such would mean we'd have less temporary HP to work with overall, because again, in order to keep refueling it, we need to have that Dark One's Blessing continuously reprocking, so this just allows us to deal more damage. However, say maybe in the middle of combat, you want to end rage. Maybe Wyll gets a sense of self, kind of flashback come up and he's like, oh crap, I need to stop raging, I'm kind of going too far. But also you maybe want to start spellcasting again, you want to use a bit more of your Warlock kit, then in the early game, pick up Reason's Grasp. Whenever you consciously choose to end your rage, as in you actually click the end rage button, you gain 15 temporary hit points. Now, if that doesn't fit this build to a T, I don't know what does. Personally, it's the flavor choice, I would take this. But mechanically, the Bone Spike Gloves do work a little bit better. And personally, I kind of like how they glow alongside the Infernal Rapier on this build, with the color scheme that I've gone for here, which is the Black and Furnace Red dye, by the way. I don't know, I just think it looks pretty damn nice. We've also got the Boots of Speed here, just to give us the ability to dash as a bonus action, which, if we need to cover a better ground and we're not going to use Charger to do it, this will just give us a bit of extra movement, but honestly, you can put whatever you like in this slot. Now, for the necklace, this is an endgame option, but I think it fits for the build, is the Unflinching Protector Amulet. This is kind of leaning into the idea that Wyll, again, is never going to let people down, ever. He has to protect those rather than he has to protect rather than do harm. So as such, once per short rest, you can basically use a reaction to make any kind of attack targeting an ally automatically miss. I mean, it's powerful, but it's the end game. You can fit anything you like in this slot, but I just kind of like this one thematically. Speaking of thematic choices, the Ring of Free Action. You ignore the effects of difficult terrain, meaning that our Charger is not going to be impeded, as well as you cannot be paralyzed or restrained. Once you start going, nothing's going to stop you, which kind of feels like a redemption hero type character kind of trope, where like they're just like kind of so fueled by that kind of rage that they feel against themselves that they just cannot stop, which, you know, fits the Ring of Free Action. In a similar vein, After Death Do Us Part. I'll be honest, I overuse this ring quite a bit, and really, you can fit anything in this slot, it doesn't matter. But I also love the idea of, like the incredibly tanky barbarian that you are, maybe you take so much damage, maybe you push yourself too far and you actually go down. So you just get back up with half your hit points and rage again, because you're the goddamn protagonist. That's the whole point. You are the Warlock Barbarian, you are the party face, you're the leader, you're the tank, you're the one who's going to save the bloody day, and nothing's going to stop you. This is the second phase of your boss fight, and you are the goddamn boss. Okay, maybe I oversold that one a bit, but it's honestly a pretty cool thing. You are supposed to get possessed with shadow possession, which would make you mad, but that's not been fixed since launch, so you just get back up with half your hit points for free. And again, that's essentially full HP with a raging barbarian, so, you know, kinda cool. But yeah, that is it. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. There's no modified camp clothing on this build. This is all vanilla, even down to the dye, which honestly, I'm kinda happy with. Anybody can play this build without any sort of mods. So yeah, that is the build, and what can I say? I'm pretty happy with it. I think this is a really cool way to blend Wyll's background and story into a unique arc of redemption where you pick the initially evil option but then work to redeem yourself after the fact, as well as introducing one of the most classic D&D tabletop builds, that being the Dark One's Blessing Barbarian, which I absolutely love. So yeah, I'm actually pretty damn proud of this one. I'm not going to keep the end of the video rambling on for too long, as I have a bit of a cold and my throat is starting to die. I've had multiple coughing fits this recording session, which is not fun. You may have heard me make some deep breaths here and there, so hopefully that's not been too bad. I'll try and edit out what I can, but if you see a lot of random jump cuts, that's why. I also totally didn't forget to take back to the blade on one level and then accidentally mess up halfway through the video and have to re-record a bunch of things. So, you know, I'm just going to end it here because it's been a long day and I'm a bit tired and I need to rest my voice so that hopefully I can record a video without any issues next weekend. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was fun to come back to Origin builds, and I'm thinking next week I might actually hold a community poll to see what class you'd like me to make a build out of next, because I feel like I've been neglecting a few. Done a lot of Warlocks, done a lot of Blade Singers, did a Ranger here, but I kind of want to see what the community wants to vote for. So yeah. That is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.